All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Andy, screen name American Reality. And let's talk about what happened yesterday and what the future of the American left actually is and what our path should be moving forward. Specifically, let's talk about Joe Biden and vote blue no matter who. Now, if you're like me, you really wanted to see Bernie win, and you saw him as a way towards progressive politics, social democracy, and economic and climate justice, as well as social justice. The results yesterday are pretty grim, and it spells out that the DNC's anointing of Joe Biden as the candidate and the consolidation effort that they used really worked. We did not have as much of a consolidation on the progressive side, which is okay. You know, I'm bummed out as much as you are about people not coming out to endorse Bernie without naming names. However, it's just the reality of the situation. And we also have to understand that this game of politics is bigger than any of us civilians can really fully grasp. Maybe certain people held out because they thought they would have more leverage and a chance of being on a cabinet or maybe influencing cabinet picks if they held out an endorsement, which in the long run could help our cause and help our representation. So we have to keep that in mind, and we have to, now more than ever, not be sectarian, not be antagonistic, and we have to start coalescing. I think the fact that the primary is sort of decided at this point allows us to now start reaching out to Warren supporters, Gabbard supporters, Yang supporters, and allows us to start building a movement of outsiders and insurgents. If you're discouraged about Bernie losing, I understand. I am too. Take the time you need to feel bummed out that we missed this opportunity, but do not get down and do not go back to sleep. Do not forget what's at stake here. It's so much bigger than us. And if you give up because our chance of getting to the presidency is now, somewhat impossible, then you miss the whole point of Bernie's movement. It's all about not me, us. Even if Bernie won the presidency, we would not be able to do this work without a large involved base of politically active and politically conscious civilians. So I just want to highlight that this work is just beginning, and now is the next chapter in our action. So we need to mobilize. We need to be involved on the community and city and local level. We need to start pushing politicians running for office and pushing policies in local communities that are progressive, so we can start involving the populace and entertaining progressive ideas and helping people warm up to the idea of social democracy and of progressive policy. I think right now we are still too divided. I think that a lot of people don't fully understand what socialism is in the sense that Bernie was talking about. I think they don't understand what a mixed market economy is, and that's because of our own political discourse in corporate media, in the way that people talk about politics, and also just sort of this idea that we can't picture a system outside the one we've had because we've had ours for so long. So there's that. We need to get involved. We need to be mobilized, and this needs to be sort of a motivation to get involved. I've been following Bernie since 2013 on social media. I found him when a Marxist professor of mine got me into leftist politics and got me into sort of understanding the flaws of capitalism. He got me into Noam Chomsky, into Howard Zinn, a lot of these figures that point out the flaws of American geopolitics, of domestic politics, and of the capitalist neoliberal system. That has now been disseminated to millions and millions of people in our age group of young people, and also outside with various communities like the increasing Latinx community that is going to be a huge factor moving forward in electoral politics. we are seeing increased representation in Congress and in other places of Justice Democrats, of people who don't take money, who use a grassroots infrastructure to get elected that Bernie Sanders laid out and sort of proved to be effective in 2016. And we are seeing a lot more support for Medicare for All, which is incredible. Bernie has already won in a sense. Before 2016, this was just not comprehensible. The closest we got was Obama, who ran on these principles and then compromised due to, the obstructionism, due to needing to play the game in order to get their foot in the door. Bernie has proved now that we can use a model that can be effective and also get us into executive offices and big kind of national level government positions without corporate money and ties. So it's all been highlighted for us. He has given us the tools, and this movement was meant to outlast him because now we understand how we can make a difference. So now we get involved and organize, and we start to spread this movement in places and in environments that are not on the national stage. And we build and we do the hard work of building coalitions over many years. When Bernie lost, I remember what point I was going to make. So yeah, he started with like 20 to 40 people in the audience announcing his presidency, and now this movement has grown to millions of people, and he is one of the most well-known senators in the country, as well as the highest favorability rating senator in the entire country. So people know who he is, and overall the general populace admires him. So we have the groundwork, we have the launch pad, and now we need to act, and we need to create more Bernie Sanders. We need to have more people running for office like AOC, and now the game begins. So that's what I want to say. People are yearning for this change, and we just need to do the groundwork and start sowing seeds of trust, of proof, of logos, so to speak. We need to establish the credibility, and we need to start working hard. When Bernie lost, I guess, in 2016, he was going into states and fighting for minimum wage for Disney workers, for Amazon workers, fighting for benefits. He was in my state of California, pushing healthcare bills that would benefit nurses' wages and also lower the cost of prescription drugs, much to the dismay of the pharmaceutical industry, who was running super PAC ads to shoot that legislation down with misinformation and scare tactics. We need to mirror Bernie's example. Bernie just doesn't stop when the election ends. He doesn't go, well, I guess progressivism doesn't work and we'll just let things continue on as usual. He's been fighting for his entire life, so we owe it to him to do the same. This is a movement that we need to carry on for decades. And all of the things that we celebrate as Democrats and as liberals, like social justice and civil rights and better pay increases, that was not from the top down, as Bernie would say. This was done through millions of people mobilizing and demanding better and fighting for that justice and putting enough pressure on their politicians to pass this kind of legislature. It didn't just magically happen. So do not go back to sleep. Do not get complacent. The work begins now. So with that said, let's talk about vote blue no matter who, and why yesterday I was saying I would probably vote for a third-party candidate, and I've changed my tune. We need to disarm the establishment at every chance we can get. However, if we enable, or if we, Trump to stay in office, if we, sit out, or we vote for third-party candidates en masse, or we write in Bernie Sanders' name en masse, there are going to be repercussions, and we are going to be shooting ourselves in the foot. We lost the increasingly influential suburban voting bloc that is between the ages of 30 to 45 and 50. With boomers, I don't really think that we had a chance. It was hard. I think that the Social Security message landed, and I know a lot of boomers who did support Bernie, but overall, that age demographic did not like Bernie and was very averse to him. There's a lot of latent Cold War fear, and a lot of those people who grew up throughout the worst of it are very averse to this idea of socialism, and that tactic is very effective. So we need to start making inroads with these suburban, Democrats who are increasingly becoming representative in red states like Texas. We need to win them over. and I think it's very doable. We just need to do the groundwork and start organizing. However, if we do not vote for Joe Biden and if Trump wins, which I do think is somewhat inevitable still, unfortunately, now we've given the Democratic establishment ammunition for a decade to attack progressive politics, call us divisive, ordering us to fall in line. And these voters who are influenced by this and want to see liberal politicians are going to buy that. And so we cannot shoot ourselves in the foot here. Not only that, however, Trump is extremely dangerous. We cannot empower a fascist going into these times of a pandemic where people are not going to get checked out because they don't have access to healthcare. People are going to go to work because their wages are so low and their benefits are so low that they cannot afford to skip work, and we don't have paid family leave. This pandemic is only going to keep going, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger. It's going to cause recessions because our supply chain is extremely disrupted right now, and we rely completely on outsourcing and free trade and cheap labor globally. So these problems are all going to get highlighted and exasperated. The student debt bubble is about to burst. The automation bubble is about to burst. There are a bunch of things coming. Not to mention, the biggest one of all, at least to me, is climate change. Climate change is going to get to a breaking point. We are going to start seeing massive amounts of climate refugees and displaced people coming into the United States, which, is good, and we should help those people out. However, there's going to be tons of social unrest because people can't afford housing as it is right now in our country, with rents going up, gentrification. And not only that, there is a racist nationalist sentiment that is being fueled right now by a Trump administration. So this is something that is going to get worse. We are going to see more hate crimes. We are going to see more anti-immigrant, xenophobic, and racist sentiment growing as this problem gets worse. And we need to take action and not allow that to happen, because the further down we go into this neo-fascist rabbit hole, the harder it is for progressives to bring us out of it. And more people are going to just want a return to normalcy and neoliberalism, and they're not going to say this is a problem of neoliberalism causing this fascism. They're going to say, it's progressives' fault for enabling Trump and allowing this to get worse and worse. And there's just too much division. So we need to tread extremely carefully and think long term here. I know how much your vote means to you. I know how disappointed you are, and I know how hard it is to kiss the establishment's feet, I'll say, and vote for their candidate. And I know how scared you are, and I agree. I'm very sad to do this too, but we have to think long term here. It's not about me. It's about us. It's about this movement surviving past this dangerous, scary time. And it is about, we are not going to have any influence pressuring a Trump presidency and cabinet. We are not. It's just simple. They are never going to listen to our protests, our activism. But what we can do is we can pressure the neoliberal and democratic establishment. There are enough of us now, and our ideas are going to spread, and things are going to get worse to where a lot of people are going to start moving to a progressive party, and people are going to realize how ineffective neoliberalism is, with the problems I mentioned earlier: free trade, proving to be a failure, our healthcare system proving to be a failure, and our inaction on climate change proving to be a failure. I mean, neoliberals are going to push the whole don't use plastic straws, bike to work kind of thing, and people it's just going to get worse and worse, because we're not going to acknowledge the corporations' influence in climate change and their acceleration of climate change with, the lack of regulation. So we have all of these things to work with and criticize the Democratic Party, and we will be able to bend their knee by primarying them. We could primary Joe Biden in 2024. We can primary all of their establishment hacks who have signed all of Trump's bills into order. We can start working and say, hey, now we're in someplace better, but let's also acknowledge the fact that you empowered Trump and we are in a shit place and have to work back towards the center because your politicians signed these bills into action and empowered the Trump presidency while claiming to be resistant. So we have a better launch pad by having Joe Biden in office. And not only that, it will save some lives, and it's very much a harm reduction vote. We will be helping immigrants. We will be helping poor people marginally, but this is something that we need to do, and we need to actually work from the starting point of a neoliberal hack and start pressuring the party because they're disempowered when we vote in mass. And as our numbers continue to grow, as problems get worse, we can work and change the Democratic Party. We have so much more leverage. We can't do that with the Trump presidency and fascists. And honestly, if we have a Supreme Court justice that Trump appoints, if something horrible happens to Ruth Bader Ginsburg and she passes from natural causes, we're seriously fucked, and it's going to take a lot more work to get our legislation through and actually passed and codified in the United States if we have a mostly conservative Supreme Court. So these are all things that we have to think about, and we cannot be so prideful and angry that we shoot ourselves in the foot and walk off a cliff, because right now is the most fertile time for American leftism to grow, disseminate, and spread. We need to take advantage of that, and we need to be smart and strategic about this. Never before in a time in history have we been able to do this. The time is now. There is no Cold War. There's no Red Scare. We can do this, and we can mobilize, and we can actually start to change the landscape of this country. And we have the tools. We have the means. We have the talking points. We have the canvassing and the grassroots infrastructure. All of this has been outlined by Bernie and expanded upon by Yang, Warren, and Tulsi Gabbard. We have all of these things, and we have people who are mad, people who want to see the institution burned down. This is a growing sentiment. 40% of Americans just want to see it all burn to the ground and something new come up. We can work with that, and if we have a neoliberal president, we can start pointing out and critiquing and say, hey, Trump was really, really bad. But you can see that there are still problems that exist because of the inefficacy of neoliberalism, the fact that corporations are writing our policy and sponsoring policy and lobbying and giving these politicians money. We have a much better leverage point to go from there. So I highly recommend you vote blue no matter who. I think that it would be a lot more effective for us as leftists to work and critique Democrats and actually be able to have some leverage and talking points and points of persuasion to bring people into our movement. And we can be loud, we can organize, we can protest, we can do all of those things still with a Joe Biden presidency and just highlight and shine the flaws on, hey, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, the system is fucked and we need something new. Pardon my language. We can very easily highlight that once we have another neoliberal and conservative Democrat at that in the office. It will be so much easier. When we have a fascist, it's very easy for people to say this is an extremist politician, so anything to the left of him is acceptable and sane and civil. Once we have a neoliberal and a conservative Democrat in the office, it will be a lot easier to say, hey, we're back to civility, but there's still these problems that exist and they're not being dealt with, and people are still dying, and we still are not moving fast enough on these issues. So I think that is our best bet. I talked about accelerationism yesterday. I don't think it would work. I think optics-wise, it's very bad and detrimental to our cause. And I would say the same thing now with voting third party. I think that we could have a lot more of an effective use in organizing, in pressuring the Democratic Party to move left if we have one in office, and we can highlight their flaws and their ineffective governance and policy making. I think that we can very easily do this. The base is there, and we need to start running for office, pushing policy forward, and we need to start being involved outside of Bernie. We need to fund grassroots politicians. We need to fund accurate information about policy that would help people, progressive policy. There is still a massive, massive amount of money in politics, and it's not going to get any easier. So we need to mobilize now, and I do think that we should vote blue no matter who. and we will have a much better staying power in discourse. We will be able to build coalitions, and there's still a lot of impressionable voters out there. There's still a lot of people who don't like Joe Biden but went with him because he's the safe pick, and in these scary times, they want something that they think is stable and predictable. Once we can highlight those flaws, once these problems start getting worse, if Joe Biden's in office, we are going to be able to just really build the bridge and bring all of these people in. And it will be so much easier and more effective in 2024 or 2028 when we can start actually, having these people represent the party and party leadership and the establishment. So let's work hard for that. I'm not asking you to organize or volunteer for Joe Biden, but what I am asking you is to vote for him. And if you think that this is something that, which I do, something that you think is important enough to working from a neoliberal model that's crumbling rather than a fascist one that is inflamed by passion on both sides, where people are going to be neoliberal because it's the only thing that they think opposes fascism, and fascists who blindly support and prop up this government. If you think that it's important to work from a neoliberal framework, then I would actually recommend you do organize and push Joe Biden, because guess what? We're going to be able to really work from that, and in the end, our end game is going to win, and we are going to be able to get progressive policy and politicians in. I don't think that people are going to be like, oh my God, Joe Biden's so great in the office, and wow, this is so much better than Trump, and oh my God. I think people are going to see that the flaws still exist with the market about to crash, with environmental issues and rippling out and about to affect our society in a large way, and our infrastructure collapsing, and millions of people being in debt. The wealth disparity is going to get worse. We can work from a neoliberal framework and say, hey, now you can see it's not just Trump, it's both parties, and we need something new. So I just wanted to give you guys something to think about. I think it's very important that we're smart and strategic about this. I think that we have a very, very fertile ground to sow the seeds and allow for progressive thought and politics to blossom in this country. The time is now. We can do this. So please be strategic about this. We need to mobilize, we need to organize on the local level, and we need to start proving to people that these policies work and that they are utilitarian and will best benefit their own lives. I think that we have a very strong case for that. So I urge you to think about this. Thanks for talking. Leave your comments and ideas down below, because maybe you're a Bernie or Buster. Maybe you're a person who is an accelerationist. Maybe you're a person who is just disenfranchised and doesn't want anything to do with this anymore. Let me know what you think, and we can have a discussion in the comments, or maybe it'll influence the next video. But I just urge you to think about this, because this is not, an authoritarian, model. I mean, this is the president, and it goes so much beyond that. It's about legislators. It's about the Supreme Court. It's about local politics and getting people introduced to the idea of socialism. It's to get people comfortable with the idea of social democracy and these policies. It's about informing people so that they can start thinking about these things rather than blindly listening to the news or other sources of information, or voting on a basis of just knowing names. So we need to start doing the work, and let's get going. Let's do this. Good luck. We can do this, guys. Peace out.